Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 1st of September 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to have Ben Rubin with me in the studio. We're also joined by Diane, Rasmussen, McAdie, live link from the northeast of England. We'll say a busy weekend for many people, and the issue of the national flag of St. George, painted on roundabouts was evident across the country. I'll say straight away that I was in the Swindon, Chippenham area, and I certainly saw a lot of flags. So there was a lot of people out and about. Before we come to you, Ben, we also want to point out that across the country at the moment, we are seeing an undertone of the growth of the military-industrial complex. So are we becoming a more militarised state? I believe we are. And much of that, of course, being done by stealth. We're also going to be having a look at education and the way that is being skewed and biased by sustainable development goals. And of course, with education comes the subject of libraries, which are increasingly being used to take control of the minds of youngsters. But on top of that, we'll be ending today's news with a look at our recent attendance at the Hope Festival, where an amazing group of people were trying to do something very different. And we thought this was so good that we are bringing it into today's news just to have a look at how people can get together, not only to inform each other and teach each other about what's going on, but to bring some strength in order to stand up and counter this really appalling orchestrated change in UK society. Well, Ben, over to you. Flag Force, I think, is the subject.
Flag Force indeed, yes. And great to be here, everyone. It's September, back to school, Christmas just round the corner and all of that. And it's been quite amazing, actually, to see the whole flag thing unfold, or unfurl, should I say, over the past few weeks. I'll just tee this up by saying that my grandmother, on the maternal side, my mother's mother was Norwegian. And if you go to Norway, there are flags everywhere, Norwegian flags in every house, every back garden. People wear them on their clothes, on the back of every boat on the river. And I actually see this as a very positive thing. I've quite enjoyed seeing the flags going up around Plymouth over the past few days. I don't think it necessarily has to be this antagonistic and awful thing. You mentioned the roundabouts, but they've been going up in their droves on lampposts and on people's cars and back gardens. This little video here from Lincoln sometime over the weekend. And as I say, I don't think this has to be a particularly negative thing, but we are also seeing the flag become a flashpoint in some ways for racial abuse and also the escalating tensions that we're seeing, even violence happening across the country, coming from both sides, I should say, because actually we've seen people putting flags up being attacked, as well as people flying flags attacking other groups. And I think that this is completely unacceptable. And I guess the question that I have is whether this recent wave of flag raising is an organic outpouring of nationalistic fervour, or if there is a hidden hand operating in the background trying to turn something that's potentially positive into something nefarious. Let's have a little listen to Joseph Moulton, the founder of Flag Force UK, talking to GB News a couple of weeks ago.
It was really kind of accidentally it's kind of blown up the way it has. A few weeks ago, a few friends of ours were kind of looking, seeing what's kind of going on in Birmingham and elsewhere. And we thought, displaying the flags of our local areas. So we had the England flags and the Yorkshire flags. We thought kind of spruce up the area a little bit. We just did one street, didn't think any more of it, until around kind of 10 days ago, we saw on the local Facebook group that everybody loved it and people were asking for more. So we kind of said, well, we've got a bit of a mandate here. And it was kind of really bringing the community together in a way that we don't really see in York. It's fairly quiet in that sense. So we began putting more up. We had a lot of people reach out to us to get involved. And since then, alongside that, we've been doing litter picking, collections for the food bank, and really trying to turn it into a kind of grassroots community organisation that's taking a bit more responsibility in the local area, picking up from the failures of the council and also the national government.
Are you concerned that the civic pride that you're bringing back, putting up these flags, could be opposed by local authorities?
Well, if it is, it'll only galvanise people. I feel like people always want a cause, and the establishment isn't appealing to people. You used to say get involved with the council, but and the council's there if you've got feedback. But you never see them knocking on doors. You don't see them in your local places, rather because they're not welcome, and also they're just completely out of touch with what's going on. So I think all that'll happen is just drive more people to the cause, and it's going to completely backfire on them.
He seems like a nice chap, doesn't he?
He does seem like a nice chap. Question in our chat box is, who does he work for?
Well, that is a very good question, absolutely. So he's talking here about a grassroots movement that has a mandate now, and it's fulfilling an important civic purpose. They're also doing good things like litter picking, helping out with food banks, filling in the gaps of council services, essentially. That's what he's saying is going on here, right? And let's be clear, there are issues with what local councils are doing. Whether this guy is going to step into the breach or not, I don't know. But that was Joseph Moulton. You can see him there talking to GB News, probably the most popular UK news broadcaster. So he's been elevated into quite a significant position, and he runs this organisation, Flag Force, which has basically come out of nowhere in the past month. So their Twitter profile, which we'll put a link to, has now got 18,000 followers. It's only been set up in the past 4 weeks. And this is their website. You can see they're tracking flags put up by local patriots across the country. And there's an invitation to join the UK's premier community network tracking the flag raisings across the nation, discover, document and celebrate the flags that unite our communities. This is essentially an intelligence gathering operation, right? They've got a map you can see here. Which I'm guessing this is a glitch because there's a flag over in Latvia. I'm not into, and a bunch in the North Sea as well. But anyway, they're all over the UK, from York, where he's based, to the Wirral, down in the left-hand side there, Shrewsbury, all over the country. And of course, Joseph Moulton is just a normal fella down the pub, worried about his country, putting up flags, and what this shows is that people are unhappy. But who is he? Where does he come from? Because if we actually look at him, his background, well, first of all, there's not a lot about him online. He's actually very difficult to find out significant historical information about. If we go to his LinkedIn profile, we can see that he is a professional creating and providing tech solutions in emerging markets, while also working to shape policy and decision-making, tech, defence, green economy, and supply chain. This is all
a lot of ticks in the box.
A lot of fourth industrial revolution stuff there. A lot of globalist stuff, to be honest with you. And let's have a little look at his picture. Blimey, that's a big weapon.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And I don't mean him in the foreground either. And then he's currently working in these two organisations. So this thing called Iberian Group, which is apparently a specialist firm providing tech solutions in defence, green economy and supply chain. Nothing on its website, very little about this organisation. And then the main one, which I found information out about, is this Geo Capita at the top there, which he's also the founder and editor of. And essentially, it says that he consults for several Fortune 500 companies and state actors in the defence and supply chain sectors, while also personally investing in the green economy and drone developments. So this is advanced warfare stuff. Absolutely, as you've just been talking about, Brian, the militarisation of the UK. This guy's sitting right in the mix of it. And it also says that he spent time in over 60 countries, including complex environments such as Ukraine and Libya. And these are the articles that he's publishing on the website. So he's looking at could we see the first nuclear armed resource war, talking about the rise of the Chinese Green Dragon. And Flag Force UK is actually currently promoting what amounts to the Ulsterisation of the country. So this is something that I just picked up from their social media this morning. Mural maxed Ulsterised near future Britain aesthetics. Yeah. Right, so they're promoting what amounts to sectarianism, multi-generational tribal conflicts overseen by a heavy-handed and fully militarised police state with extraordinary powers of surveillance and detention. I think that's what's been happening in Northern Ireland.
For a long time.
And this seems to be the direction of travel that this guy, this organisation who's been put front and centre as being involved in this, wants us to be heading in. And I think this is an extraordinarily dangerous direction for us to be going in. I will note, though, on a positive note, that our multi-ethnic brothers and sisters around the UK have got wise to this. And this is a post from a Birmingham Muslim Facebook group which came up over the weekend, which says, strong reminder to all brothers in this group, do not take down England flags. Do not fight with anyone putting up England flags. If anything, help them. If anything, put them up on Allen Rock Road, Stratford Road, etc. in Birmingham, as this will show unity among the working classes in the UK, white and brown. This is important. This is what we need. This is a great reaction. To carry on, it says, this is an astroturfing campaign by Zionist think tanks, certainly a think tank. I don't know if he's a Zionist, but he's in the mix. That seems clear to me, who are unhappy with Palestine flags being flown in the UK. They're pushing for England flags to be hung up and waiting for the video which shows Asians fighting whites over the England flag. Do not fall for it. They want to create a race war using flags as the symbology to rally more racists. Remember, they are itching for a fight over flags to trigger the next riots, obviously leading into the big Zionist nationalist event organised by Tommy Robinson in London coming up on the 13th of September. So read between the lines on this one. Not necessarily a bad thing, but don't let this get dragged in the wrong direction. And I should just finish up by saying thank you to this X account, Get a Grip, Doc Russ Jackson, who did a great piece of research that I've borrowed from, which you should go and have a look at yourself. So yeah, more to come.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Ben. And of course, the key bit is that everybody should be proud of their national flag. Of course, many of us are not because of what's being done in the name of our country. But the base level, everybody should be proud. And of course, we go to other countries like the US or Norway, you've just mentioned, people are proud to
other countries
fly their national flag. Yeah. So something very, very devious is happening here, and it clearly seems to be to capture the mood around patriotism and then to use that as the catalyst to create trouble on the streets. And of course, if there's violence on the streets, then the state and all its brutal machinery is the only thing that wins. But I was fascinated there, Ben, that we're talking about that man seemingly pinned against what appears to be a big chunk of the military-industrial complex. Well, what's the papers talking about at the moment? I have to bring up the Daily Telegraph because it's one of the big boys, newspaper of record. But here's the headline, Queen fought off sex attacker. And apparently this is a story that the whole nation should be paying attention to. Of course, it's an allegation. It was something that happened when she was young. What has she done since to protect people against sex attackers or children being abused in the care homes? I've no idea. But the Telegraph put it as the main page. But of course, the key headline was this bit up here, Docked Destroyer that sums up our sinking Navy. And we'll get into what they're talking about. But first of all, let's have a look at what Defence HQ, the government's propaganda machine in UK, what it's talking about in relation to the world and the wars. Let's have a listen to Alistair.
Here in Kyiv on Ukrainian Independence Day with a very simple message. The UK stands with you in this fight and in securing a just and lasting peace. The Ukrainians have shown incredible strength in this conflict, a strength I have seen meeting some of the veterans of the war. Veterans, just like our own, act as an inspiration for not only the nation here, but serving personnel in the UK. We're working closely with the US, Ukraine and the coalition of willing partners to bring about peace, but Ukraine must be central to any negotiations. President Zelensky's leadership has been utterly amazing. I commend his courage and leadership as the country moves forward. In stark contrast, Russia has refused to agree to a full ceasefire. It's stepped up its tax on Ukrainian people since the US-led peace efforts have began. Indeed, just 6,200 one-way attack drones since July. A lasting peace is only possible if we continue to show strength and provide Ukraine with the support it needs to defend itself against continued and unabated Russian aggression. The UK is completely behind Ukraine, and with our allies, we will continue to support you until you tell us to stop. Slava Ukraine.
So as we have the issue with the flags around the country, we've got Defence HQ pumping out propaganda with this very emotive music. But this MP, Is he naive or ignorant? I can't work it out. He may be both. Perhaps we should have Zelensky as Prime Minister to replace Starmer, because Zelensky, of course, is running a country with absolutely no corruption. People have happy, safe lives or not. And I just find it outrageous that MPs should think that we are so naive that we should fall into the trap of what they're talking about. Now, let's have a look at the Chief of Defence Staff, Radican, meeting up with Zelensky a few days ago.
Good to see you again. How are you? Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thank you for having us again. It's my relief. The new Chief of Defence next.
We are very thankful to you, your country, and to your government and nation for such strengthening us from the very beginning of this war. And we're thankful to Kir, Prime Minister, for such deep involvement to this process, and with coalition of willingness and with the support. So thank you so much.
Thank you. The Prime Minister sends his regards. I did a speech last week where I had to name check every Prime Minister for their support to me over my time, 4 years as Chief of Defence. But this is also about introducing Rich and to stress that our support to you and Ukraine is not personality dependent, it's nation dependent, and Rich will continue that level of support in exactly the same way that you would expect.
Thank you so much.
Well, Ben, I've got to say to you, I found that clip absolutely outrageous and offensive. Those two grinning senior officers using a very casual name, my friend Rich. When you look at Zelensky's face at one point, he is smirking. He's laughing at these two people, and well, he might, because we've got Radican, who can't even run the Royal Navy in UK, and we'll come on to that in a couple of minutes. And we've also got his Relief Air Chief Marshal Rich Knighton, not a pilot, not a navigator, no substance to the man in order to be head of the Royal Air Force. And yet these are the people dragging the UK into this awful war in Ukraine. I'll talk about this more in extra time, but clearly offensive stuff. Now, if we just pop him on screen, I decided the best way to refer to Radican was Zelensky's Chief of Staff, because he's clearly not working for the British people. How can we prove this? Well, let's have a look at some of the headlines. Here's the UK Defence Journal, and it's talking about a snapshot of the status of the British fleet. If we bring in some meat on those bones, they say currently just over 19% of the Royal Navy's major surface competents are active or immediately deployable. If ships in maintenance are included, that figure reaches around 43%. But of course, if ships are in maintenance, they are not immediately deployable. So we're talking about major breakdown. They go on to say this: the Navy is no longer just hollowed out, but holding on, and is now actually incapable of performing many of the routine tasks it managed until quite recently. And it says this breakdown is not the result of losses in combat or even the pressure of high-tempo operations, but as a result, there's a word missing there, long-term failure. And of course, the man responsible for that failure is Radican himself, because he's been head of the very organisation, but he is apparently capable of now running the war in Ukraine. Ben, we've used this expression many times on UK Column, but sometimes you just can't make this up. It is so bad and so bizarre. Let's rub this in, because here's the Telegraph. Occasionally they do get off bad front pages, but here's the headline: it's time to be honest with ourselves. The Royal Navy is broken. And if you get into the meat of their article, it's going into detail about how the Royal Navy is broken down, including the first of the 6 Type 45 destroyers being alongside for 3,000 days, a ship that doesn't work. And of course, many of that class of ships, the Type 45, having had engine problems, so they can't get to sea. But the Telegraph also pointing out that the recent deployment of our aircraft carrier in supposedly a task force, which should be a very powerful group of ships, there was no nuclear submarine with them. This is unprecedented. And what we're looking at is a major breakdown. But if I pull in this one here, this is taken from the Royal Navy's own website, where it's almost impossible to see how many few ships we have, because it's full of jazzy hype and moving images. But here's the Type 45 being labelled as one of the most advanced warships ever built, presumably so advanced it could never go to sea. Where is the military going at the moment? Well, of course, the military is after the minds of our children. So let's have a look at cadet recruiting.
Here's a fact. There are more youngsters in the cadet forces than there are soldiers in the British Army. So in Britain, when you meet someone in uniform, chances are it'll be a cadet rather than a soldier. And that's only set to increase with the government pledging a 30% rise in cadet participation, setting itself a more ambitious target than for recruitment in the armed forces.
So Defence HQ criticising Putin for going into the schools and recruiting in Russia, but here we are boasting that we've now got more cadets than members of the army itself, which is around 78,000. So what is this? A mild version of Hitler Youth, which is coming in order to provide the bodies for the future wars. Dangerous stuff. But let's look at a second video clip from Defence HQ, when effectively they're pulling on the heartstrings of the public in relation to Ukraine.
We just want to do everything that we can to help the people of Ukraine.
Hello, I'm Anne.
And I'm Jane.
And between us, together with all our efforts, we've raised £15,000 to help with support for Ukraine. The money we raised has all gone to Ukraine in the form of equipment, boots, warm clothing, sleeping bags, first aid kits, for Starlink subscriptions, whatever is needed.
I'm William Cook, and I'm the Director of Cook Defence Systems based here in County Durham. We're proud to have delivered new tracks to allow over 500 Ukrainian armoured fighting vehicles to be returned to the front line.
On Operation Interflex, we trained more than 58,000 Ukrainians in basic combat skills.
It's been a privilege to be able to help, and I pray to God that your country will be independent and free.
We really feel that our operation is having an impact, helping Ukraine to repel Russia.
It's showing that not only government support Ukraine, it's showing that civilian people who feeling this in their heart, that they want support Ukraine.
Whether it's training soldiers or people like Anne and Jane raising money for Ukraine, we really feel the UK support.
It's definitely something we're proud of, but it's not just us. People up and down the country are all supporting Ukraine in their own way.
So I think just terrible that those ladies, and I'm sure their hearts are in the right place and they're working very hard for what they believe is the right cause. But of course, they're going to have no knowledge at all about the real causes of the war in Ukraine, and they're going to have no idea about the slaughter on the battlefields in Ukraine. But the government is going to use them in the most twisted way in order to try and get its war agenda through. I found that one particularly appalling, but let's just move on. Come back on this. Let's just move on very briefly to this one, which is Rheinmetall in Germany, the arms manufacturer. A couple of years ago got a very big contract to produce more shells because, of course, the West was running out of shells. So their production now online. and those shells are coming into Ukraine to help fuel the war. But of course, this is promoted as being something which is good for Germany and good for Europe. Here they are heading for an annual output of around 700,000 rounds. But in the meantime, we've got more going on because we've got Britain now teaming up with Japan. And I found this one very cynical as well. 1 minute, Healy is holding the arms of veterans. Of course, many of them, or the few that are left, went through horrors fighting the Japanese. So he's now cuddling up to the vets. But what's going on in the background is working with Japan to get over that embarrassing hump of the death in World War II in order that we can team up to what is being described as one of the closest defence partners we've got in the world. So more trouble. And of course, this is Asia in light of their supposed threats from China. But we've got a new military deal with Norway, 10 billion. This is an order from the Norwegians for frigates from UK. Why they want to buy from us, I have no idea. We've already shown the disaster with the Type 45, but more of the industrial complex. But when we talk about Israel, John Healy is very, very quiet. He said he's spoken to the Israeli defense minister and stressed the need for a diplomatic solution to end the war. I told Israel to stop the war, and giving them the arms to do so is the way I see this, which is utter hypocrisy. And I'm very pleased to say that actually on the website itself for Defence HQ, people were really pushing back about what's being posted. So here's somebody standing up for people in Gaza who are having to cope with the drones and explosive robots. And this one caught my eye because whilst the headline is Israel has the right to cut off food, water and electricity, and we see Keir Starmer bathed in blood, the actual text is talking about Israeli Defense Forces sniping. And I'll just bring people's attention to a discussion I had with Patrick Henningsen last week. This will go out tomorrow at 1:00. But it's us talking about an excellent, yes, I did say that word, an excellent documentary by Stephanie Hegarty from BBC World Service, who was examining why children are dying in Gaza as the result of gunshot wounds. Very young children clearly being killed by IDF snipers. So we'll be going into that in more detail. But Diane, let's bring you in. Apologies there because I've overrun slightly there on my segment, but clearly very important things to talk about. A massive change in UK society. This is a fascist partnership which we're seeing between government and big business, and of course capturing the minds of children and young people through education in the libraries goes along with this type of agenda. So Diane, welcome, and what have you got?
Yes, thanks, Brian. It's great to be here today, and hello to everyone at home watching and everywhere else. As Ben said at the start of the news, it's back to school time. It's the 1st of September, which is really hard to believe. But because Sandy Adams and I have been working together recently on looking at how we can explain the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, which are working together, of course, to the public. And so we want people to understand, first of all, what they say if you read the documents at face value, and also what they actually mean. So because it's back to school time, and because I am an educator and a librarian originally by profession, I thought I would spend some time today looking at Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is quality education. So quality education, according to the UN, means ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. That's what they tell us it means. And this is, again, one of 17 goals, but at the same time, what we see is that if you read the documentation, it says that SDG 4 is a very important goal to make sure that all of the goals happen, because we have to educate people so that they know the right way to behave according to the UN. If we look at the 2025 Sustainable Development Goals report, which I've just got a quick screenshot from one of the infographics from this report. It says that, as I've covered previously, that the UN admits that they are behind on all the SDGs, or in some cases regressing. And in this case, this one is showing, well, of course, we don't want children to be out of school, but that's what they're using to show that they're not talking about what they're actually educating children to do, which is to be good global citizens. But of course, at face value, you would want children to be in school, of course. But how are they doing this? Well, I'm going to be covering this also in my second segment, which will be later in the news. But here's one example of one curriculum provider that is providing materials to children and telling teachers what they can be doing. So this is one organization called Raising Global Citizens, KIDIZENS, Citizens, Global Citizens. And here's a book list, for example, of picture books that can be used to explain Sustainable Development Goal 4, quality education to children. And here's a video that they have provided on their website, which is meant to be shown to primary school students about SDG 4.
Knowledge is the key to open many doors in life. When we have access to good quality education, we can use it to become whatever we want: an astronaut, a chef, a doctor. No matter who we are or where we live, when we learn new skills and ideas, our minds grow. And when that happens, we can invent new things that benefit lots of different people. Good education is possible when there are enough teachers, when every student has books and computers and supplies, and when schools are safe and clean. But not every student has the same opportunities to learn. In some countries, girls can't go to school because only boys are allowed to attend. In others, they have responsibilities at home, so they can't go to school. And in some communities, there isn't enough money to pay for important things like teachers, books, and computers. So the number of students in each class is high, meaning not every child gets the education they deserve. But good people everywhere are working hard to make quality education accessible to everyone. In Tanzania, 51% of the population are children, but few attend kindergarten. So the charity Children in Crossfire is giving parents learning materials so they can prepare their kids for primary school at home. In Singapore, government values teachers very highly, so they are paid well for their work and given lots of training to become even better. Together, we can make quality education a reality for everyone, everywhere.
So I can imagine people in other countries seeing this, especially children who don't understand geopolitics, sort of why they might want to make them feel guilty about having access to education if they are, for example, in the UK or the Western countries. But anyway, Global Citizens provides this particular coloring page that if you want to download it, they can color the SDGs that shows exactly how to proceed through all of them. And so you can just see over and over again that these curriculum providers are finding all kinds of ways to make things appeal to children, to kind of get them afraid about the SDGs and what they need to be doing to save the planet. I want to remind people as well, and this is very important, about Julian Huxley, who was the person who founded UNESCO. I'll get back to him in just a minute, but think about Julian Huxley being a eugenicist. And if we actually look now at what Sandy Adams says that SDG 4 really does, we can see the connections, which is to standard curricula globally to promote the UN-approved ideology, rewrite history, push climate alarmism and identity politics, create a generation primed for compliance with technocratic norms, and ultimately artificial intelligence-driven teaching and assessment, which I saw signs of before I left the education sector. Now, returning to Julian Huxley, I have a couple of things about him. First, let's watch this quick video that summarizes the document that he wrote, which introduced UNESCO and its relation to the United Nations back in the 1940s.
In UNESCO's purpose and philosophy document, Huxley writes, "The scientific method has firmly established itself as the only reliable means by which we can increase both our knowledge of and control over objective natural phenomena." Fundamental to his thesis was the central idea that humankind could guide the process of evolution consciously. Natural selection was to be replaced by conscious selection as the motor of evolution, the possible rate of which was therefore enormously sped up. Perhaps the most significant of the claims made in this document was the need for UNESCO to promote population control and the study of the eugenics problem. It is very curious for Julian Huxley to be destined to drive man's evolutionary progress when his brother, none other than Aldous Huxley, gave us A Brave New World.
So just to follow up that dystopian video, and I want to just read a couple of quotes from his UNESCO document where he said, "The recognition of the idea of an optimum population size, of course relative to technological and social conditions, is an indispensable first step towards that planned control of populations, which is necessary if man's blind reproductive urges are not to wreck his ideals and his plans for material and spiritual betterment." And on the next slide, we can see as well, he's saying that, we need to recognize that this population control is going to happen. And we are replacing, basically, we can't replace the wildlife, but we can look at what we can do about the problem of mankind. It is necessary, if we are to realize in time, that areas must be set aside where, in the ultimate interest of mankind as a whole, the spread of man must take second place to the conservation of other species. So now we see we're saving the planet, we're saving other things, not necessarily saving mankind. And ultimately, in the conclusion of this document, he says that what UNESCO must aim at is not the promotion of a single movement, but the orchestration of diversity. Diversity. We hear that word everywhere now, don't we? The task is to help the emergence of a single world culture with its own philosophy and background of ideas and with its own broad purpose. So later on in the news, I will be coming back to specifically education for sustainable development and how libraries are helping to promote SDG 4 to our children, Brian and Ben.
Diane, thank you very much for that excellent analysis. And of course, it's in our faces now. We're not dealing with policy, which is national policy coming out of Westminster or parliaments of other nation states. We're dealing with the international rules-based order and its policies for, yes, a one-world system. And of course, if you're going to have a one-world system, the military and the police have got to be fully integrated in that. And of course, wars are very good machinery for reducing those nasty men and women on the planet, if you want to be deeply cynical about it. Let's take a break just for a bit and say a huge thank you to everybody who supports UK Column, because we can only do this with your financial support. If you're not already a supporter, have a look on the UK Column webpage, and you can click the magic button in order to support us, make a donation, or join up for a monthly or annual membership, or as some people prefer to join us as a lifetime member. Now, huge thank you to everybody who's already signed up for the UK Column on location in York on the 18th of October. Andrew Wakefield speaking. We've also mentioned your ability to be able to see Protocol 7 with this. We've mentioned Tess Laurie as another speaker, but today I'm going to say, Ben, you will also be speaking to the audience at this event, and it's really good that we have got a UK Column speaker taking part. We've got more speakers to talk about, but I have to say we are now left with just a few tickets. I think we've got a couple over 80 left. We would like to see you there. So if you haven't got a ticket yet, please get onto the website and make a purchase. It's going to be a really wonderful event, superb surroundings, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Now, Germ Warfare tonight at 7 p.m. is an interview with Simon Roche. And Diane, you've got some articles that have gone up here on the UK Column website. If you'd be kind enough just to take us through.
Yes, just some articles that I have published in the past week as our commissioning editor for written content. The first one I'd like to point out is what we hope will be the first part of a 4-part series with Hugh McCarthy, who we've had lots of content from him in the past. He's a retired head teacher in Northern Ireland. This is a 4-part series about the effects of the lockdowns and the 2020 episode on children. This one is basically saying evidence from mainstream sources and so on that are easily quotable, saying that, yes, they did know what they were doing to children and they did it anyway. The other article that I have here is from Mark Anderson, who's, of course, one of our Friday contributors. He wrote a report about the UN and 80 and other key topics highlighted at Tulsa's Red Pill Expo. He's covered Red Pill Expo for us in past years, and this is this year's report from that event. And finally, we have an article that I wanted to highlight, which is really interesting, from Dr. Joost Landgriebe. Charles Mallet mentioned this one on Wednesday's news as well, asking questions about AI and whether it is evil or good and the power of AI. And I'd like to cover one thing here as well, which is happening up here in Scotland. It's the Food and Health Festival, which is sponsored by my organization, which I am a member of the executive committee, Common Knowledge Edinburgh, taking place on the 28th of September at 10 a.m. in Merchiston. I am a member of this committee, and I would also like to announce that I'm very excited that Charles Mallet will be up here with me to speak at the conference as someone who knows quite a bit about this area. And tickets are free. So if you want to come see me and Charles on the 28th of September in Edinburgh, please join us.
Excellent. Diane, thank you very much for that. Well, let's come back to you, Ben. And you've been looking at really the creation of the alternative society for some time. You're back on the subject of Makespace Oxford.
Yeah, what's going on in Oxfordshire? So I reported on this back in June, I believe it was, and we looked at Makespace Oxford, its theory of change to transform our entire society, basically, into something completely new. Well, I mean, we'll define better, but to remind ourselves, let's have a little listen to this short film from Makespace Oxford talking about the work that they're doing.
We've encountered hidden layers affecting places and spaces in our county, ultimately underpinned by inequity. Want to know what they are? 1. Values and beliefs. A culture of extraction and exclusion has led to private, individualised ownership focused around profit and growth, rather than what the community actually needs. 2. Funding, resources and knowledge. Money isn't going to the right places, it's not being shared within neighbourhoods, or it's travelling abroad. 3. Contracts, systems and processes. Business owners are struggling with complex laws which are out of date and inaccessible. We can see that the land and property system is not working for people or our living planet. So what's our alternative? The Makespace approach. Our mission is to unlock spaces and resources, build capacity within communities, influence local governments and power holders to transform the land and property system together. Collaborating locally and nationally, we're working with those developing demonstrator neighbourhood hubs, large spaces that bring lots of groups together to imagine and prototype alternative futures by creating new forms of social and civic infrastructure that's democratic, regenerative and interconnected. They already exist in one form or another, but now we want to go deeper. The answer to all the challenges we've posed in this video is right here, in our community. It just needs the right conditions to be nurtured. Makespace Oxfordshire is one part of that process, by helping to create the places and conditions for people to thrive. Join us as we build an alternative future, centering community wealth, climate resilience, and fostering cultures of care and connection.
Well, Ben, nauseating music as always, and many of our viewers offended by it, quite rightly. But notice the soft sell. Society is going to change into something better, and we need better communities to do this. So you're led into to believing that they are going to be working through communities in a very soft way. But of course, before the revolution can really install itself, the old has to be destroyed. And I'll just remind people where we started, warning about what is really under the surface, stirring everything to do with national pride and the flags. So you want to destroy the old society. If you can get everybody at each other's throats, then they can bring in this new, very dangerous utopia.
Exactly. And while everyone's getting upset outside of migrant hotels in Epping or elsewhere around the country, this thing is being built in the background
as we speak.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is communism, basically. It's the 21st century variety of communism. Woke corporatism, basically, is the term that I've arrived at, because you have communist ideas brought to you by international corporations, and those two things are working together in parallel. And this has been going on since 2021. And there's this document that one of their reports, and they have up in the top left-hand corner, it says, "Meanwhile in Oxfordshire." And for me, this speaks to what's happening here, right? Because they're deliberately orchestrating chaos around the country. And meanwhile, they're cutting to a different scene in the story. And you have to understand that what's playing out on your TV screens is a story, is a narrative. It's been scripted, and I think that this document explains that really well. So they kicked off in 2021. There's been a whole process that they've gone through, and ultimately they are seeking to actively engage in the total wholesale transformation of our society from top to bottom. They're still at it, believe it or not. Of course they are. And they've just announced this little event coming up in 10 days or so, 16th of September, so a couple of weeks out. And this is brought to you by an organisation called Cooperative Futures. Makespace Oxford are in the mix as well. There's always a kind of network of these things, making it more difficult to pin down. But ultimately, this is all about delivering the UN Sustainable Development Agenda.
Funded by UK government, of course.
Funded by UK government. Makespace, the chair of Makespace was a senior civil servant until she stepped down the week after. The day, I think it was, that I did that initial report. I can't remember if I mentioned that on the news before. So what's this all about, this event coming up? So it's about providing one-to-one social business development support, free training workshops, peer support groups to the people that are engaged in building this new communitarian system. A lot of it centres around this, which is the introduction of this thing called a community interest company, CIC, which is essentially a new type of business. And if you provide a link, you can go and have a look at the page on the .gov website. But essentially, CICs, they're limited companies which operate to provide a benefit to the community they serve. The purpose of a CIC is primarily one of community benefit rather than private profit. Importantly, introduced by Blair in 2005. So this has kind of been sat in the background. It's really being elevated at the moment. And it's actually being used by a lot of people in the freedom movement, I've noticed. And I think that there might be an issue here. I think this is a trap. I can understand why people are going for this structure, but there's something to do with the way it's constituted, where you have to pass a community interest test. So a CIC must satisfy the regulator that a reasonable person might consider that the CIC's activities are or will be carried out for the benefit of the community. So when you've got the regulator involved, reasonable people that have been educated in the right way, potentially, that are signed up to this system. I think there's a control component here, a compliance component that is going to come back and bite people with this structure. I think this is a really important part of this new system that they're building. One example of the CICs, and really crucially in terms of who is coming into the country in order to build this new system, is this organisation, which was part of the ecosystem around this event coming up on the 16th, right? And this is really important. African Families in the UK. CIC. The vision of AFI UK is to equip African and other ethnic minority families in the UK to take their rightful place as fruitful members of our society and to make the most of the available opportunities in their adopted country without adversely affecting the strong family and community networks that Africans are known for. That's interesting, right? Because they're doing everything they can to undermine family and community in the UK, but when they're bringing people in from Africa and elsewhere, they're going to do everything that they possibly can to avoid undermining those strong family and community networks, because those are what make communities robust. Interesting, isn't it?
At which point I say, Ben, and of course what's actually going to happen is they will eventually betray those African families because they won't look after them at all.
No. They'll do exactly the same thing to them that they're doing to us right now. Really importantly. And by the way, I don't think the vast majority of people coming into the country through programs like this have got any indication whatsoever that they're caught up in something potentially dangerous, frankly, for them as well as everyone around them. Let's just go back to this slide. Let me just zoom in. I mean, there was loads in that text that we could spend time on, but we're a bit pushed for time, so maybe we can pick that up again in extra. But look at that. African families in the UK. Africa presented as being the same size as the UK. Africa's land, the UK is 0.8% of the size in terms of land mass as Africa. And it's got 4% of the population. So it's already a lot more densely populated, but apparently we've got to bring African families into the UK. Interesting. And it's not just African families, importantly, because if you go to the AFI UK website, you can see that it's also other racially minoritized families in Oxfordshire. So this is basically anyone who isn't ethnically English, right? And let's be absolutely clear. This is who they're serving the interests of. It's run by these two ladies. So this is Jackie Gitau, hopefully I'm saying that right, and then Dr. Rachel Walton at the top there, who's a community leader, author, strategic innovator, partnering with various councils, Oxfordshire County Council, Oxford City Council, the University of Oxford all over this. The library at Blackbird Leys is in there, so that's quite interesting. Should overlap quite nicely with what Diane's going to talk about in a moment. And importantly, because I hadn't drawn this direct connection in the last report, the King. So they've just received the King's Award for Transformative Impact. This was issued just a month ago. And this award lives on the DCMS website, Department of Culture, Media and Sport. So this is all being run out of the establishment, central government, royal family. And he hasn't just put his name to it. He was also in attendance at the awards ceremony, handing them out to these lovely ladies to put his royal mark of approval on the creation of a completely new communitarian parallel system in Oxfordshire, while the country is going up in, well, metaphorically going up in flames. Hopefully it doesn't go up in actual flames.
Meanwhile, the big headline is about the Queen fighting off an attacker with a shoe when she was younger.
Isn't she brave?
Not talking about what this is about. So the Telegraph, does the Telegraph know what's going on? I'm going to say they don't, not at a basic
I'm going to say
level.
they do.
Editorial board does. I'm going to say the average journalist.
Average journalist, probably not.
Probably not. But we are putting this information across. Have you got, was that the final?
That is me done, Brian.
Diane, let's bring you back. We've got so much we'd like to talk about in today's news. It's always a problem to fit it in with available time. But let's bring you back. And of course, the subject is really the attack on children's minds by this rules-based international order group.
Yes, that's right. And following up on what I just covered in my previous segment, ending with Julian Huxley, UNESCO, which, as I said, he founded with that document talking about population control and putting man second, and the issue of saying diversity versus the one world order, like what is actually going on there. But anyway, UNESCO is known as, they call themselves the United Nations Specialized Agency for Education. And to go along with Agenda 2030, they also have Education 2030, which is what I'm going to focus on here in just a little bit more. They wrote this document called the Education for Sustainable Development, a Roadmap. And this is, I think, around 80 pages. Again, as I do for all of our viewers normally, I read it so you don't have to. And what it talks about in specifically is basically how we're going to educate people, children, and so on in the schools and libraries on how to become sustainable development citizens. In the introduction to it, we have Stefania Giannini, who was the Assistant Director of UNESCO for Education. She said that the so-called COVID-19 pandemic that spread across the planet in 2020 is not only a global health crisis, it is a crisis affecting every aspect of our lives, and one that has revealed, she had a misspelling there, reveled, the fragility of our interdependence with nature. Again, nature being more important than us. We have learned that as forests are destroyed, not only are wild animals endangered and ecosystems weakened, but also humans become exposed to unknown infectious agents that can threaten their lives. Now, how all that exactly ties in with a so-called deadly virus, I'm not sure. But anyway, SDG target 4.7 of sustainable development and global citizenship is considered to be a very major target within one of the biggest SDG goals, which is education. And this one says that by 2030, so we've only got less than 5 years left now for this, ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence. It's not exactly what we're seeing in the world right now. Global citizenship and appreciation of cultural diversity, there's that word again, and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. So we can see in here, again, in part of the 80-page report, we have the Sustainable Development Goal Wheel, which we have shown before. And this shows specifically how each of the 17 SDGs ties in directly to education. So it's not just SDG 4, it's all of them. And you can look at that in more detail. The link will be in the show notes for that. So when I'm talking specifically about libraries and reading, which of course is one of my loves of my life, we have a book club from the UN, which is the Sustainable Development Goal Book Club, which is part of SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals. And so I want to talk here specifically about IFLA in relation to reading and libraries. So IFLA is the International Association or Federation for Library Associations and Institutions. I know this organization well because it's sort of the parent organization for all worldwide library associations, including CILIP here in the UK, which I used to be a member of before I was exiled from there, as well as the American Library Association, which I used to belong to. And they just held their annual conference, the World Library and Information Congress, last month. So here is a clip from the president of IFLA. Her name is Vicky McDonald. She's a librarian from Australia, and the conference was held in Astana, Kazakhstan.
Please strengthen our voice. Since our last Congress in Rotterdam in 2023, there has been significant changes in our world. The influence of geopolitical forces is impacting every corner of the world. It's impacting our daily work. And now, perhaps more than any other time in almost 100 years at IFLA, as a profession, we need to be more vocal about the contributions that we can make to our respective communities. We need to be searching for radical solutions and use our collective voice to drive better outcomes for our communities, but also at a global level. One of IFLA's strengths is our recognition as a global voice for libraries. But we can only credibly engage in spaces like the United Nations and UNESCO if we can show that this voice truly represents a field that is constantly striving to.
So we can see here Vicky McDonald making claims, as IFLA has done for years, about it being a globalist organization and promoting the global agenda. I was a member of the Education and Training Committee, as an elected member of the committee up until last year when I resigned from the organization. It's also interesting to note that Vicky McDonald was president in 2024, leading up to the 2024 IFLA conference. They decided to withdraw from holding the conference in Dubai because Dubai was not seen as being an inclusive place for the LGBT community, never mind that they were excluding a large part of the world by excluding that part of the world. Anyway, IFLA just published a book, or one of the groups of IFLA, which focuses on sustainable development goals, published this book in June this year called Libraries Driving Education for Sustainable Development. This is over 400 pages telling you exactly how libraries of all types can promote sustainable development education. Here is also a poster that is meant to be placed in school libraries around the world, which is the IFLA UNESCO School Library Manifesto 2025. So if you are near a school library or have children in school libraries, take a look at this and see if you can spot this poster anywhere. I'd be interested to hear if you do find it. A group that has been working for years within IFLA has created this resource called Library Map of the World, which shows exactly which Sustainable Development Goals are being met and in which ways and by which countries and what they're doing. So if we drill down, as I did here, to SDG 4, which again is quality education, we see that there are 45 stories in 31 countries explaining exactly how these are being implemented in libraries around the world. So we have a video here that I would like to just show quickly from Ukraine. This is called SDG Stories, and it talks about here which Sustainable Development Goals they are meeting. And we see here that a children's library in Ukraine is empowering children to tackle the environment and its issues. Children Looking Happy, their Garbage Hero project, helps families learn about recycling while having fun, waste management. Children apply their knowledge during interactive activities at the library, online, and in their homes. And what else are they doing here? Well, since 3,000 children since 2016 between ages 4 and 15 have taken part. 70% of families have reported improved attitudes and recycling habits. And there are more stories available from around the world on the Library Map of the World and these SDG stories. So we can see exactly how they're doing it. And I would imagine that Ukraine has more to worry about at this point in time than how much the children are learning to recycle. But the part of the bigger agenda, of course, with population control, we see things around the LGBT community and the promotion of deviant sexual behaviors, pedophilia. Here's an example from 2023 when the Daily Mail reported about a book called Granddad's Pride. They reported to the library that they weren't happy about it, and the nursery agreed to withdraw the book from the lessons. This book is called Granddad's Pride. As I said, it's got another book which is related to it by the same author called Granddad's Camper. So there's the cover of the book, and I will talk about this book more in extra because I actually own a copy of it, and I've looked at the contents quite a bit. I'm writing an article about it. But here's just some of the images we see here. For example, MAP, which is shown as a map, but it could also be an abbreviation potentially for minor attracted persons. We see the slogan, love is love is love, which is used by certain pedophilic communities and minor attracted people, as they call them. And we see here two men wearing bondage gear, fetish gear, talking about all we need is love, and it's all about love and inclusion, and it's all wonderful. So again, we'll talk about this book more in extra, but I just wanted to show that this is an example of how we are putting this agenda around population control and control of children's minds directly into the hands of the children and the libraries and the schools, Brian.
Diane, thank you very much. Really important to expose this so that parents, wherever you are, can see it. And of course, when you see it, you can challenge it and fight it. But it's obvious that the minds of children are being targeted by this pernicious material. And the aim is to break down family life, is to break down proper relationships between men and women themselves. So very, very dangerous stuff. And to see libraries being used as a weapon on a global basis is truly horrific. But we'll discuss it a little bit more in extra time. Now, we're going to end today's news on what we think is a very big positive. We will show part of a clip that we have about the Hope Festival, which we attended a couple of weeks ago now. It was a tremendous event, lots of really interesting people coming together, socialise, relax, enjoy each other's company in brilliant weather, music and camping. And one of the things that struck me was, although everybody was largely very casually dressed, a huge mix of different people. So we had professionals, we had non-professionals, we had musicians, we had people skilled at working with their hands, all of those people coming together, all of those people understanding something really bad going wrong in our society, and they were all there determined to do something about it. So let's have a look at a couple of minutes of this, and we'll see the full video in UK column extra in a few moments.
The first, the original, and many here would say the best, Hope, Freedom, Music Festival. The event started in 2022, providing a sanctuary of sanity for those questioning the madness going on in the world. Now in its 4th year, and having inspired many other freedom festivals in the UK, it's still regarded by many as the original outdoor home for those seeking truth, like-minded people, music and fun. Organisers Sadie Single and Katie Jo Murphin and the huge team that makes up Hope worked tirelessly all year to make the event happen. Battling against the COVID insanity may have been the original reason for Hope, but now it's not about fighting.
I think the whole point of Hope and creating community is a transition away from mainstream society to create something else that's completely different. It's what we want. It's our society, surrounded by the people that we love and we want. Growing food and educating our children in our vision is what we want. I've spent a lot of my life fighting against the system, and I've realised after quite a long time that it's actually completely pointless. You just need to create your own system entirely, and that's really what we're doing at Hope.
If there were more places like this, then there would be more places for people to go, and we'd just grow bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. And I do think it is a case of we just say no. We have got to start just removing ourselves and going, we're not going to do it, we're not complying. That's our strongest weapon, I think, is the ability to say we're not having it.
Doing our bit for freedom and truth, of course, UK Column. The team took over the Hope Talk tent for the whole day on Saturday. 7 hours of presentations, a live recording of UK Column news, and Q&A with a very switched-on audience. It was informative, inspiring, uplifting, and it certainly hit the spot. The tent was...
Well, there we are, a taster. We'll show the full clip in UK Column in a few moments. But Ben, you were there, you were speaking, really wonderful people, and great to see such interest in what was actually happening in the country and the information that UK Column was putting across.
It was fantastic. Yeah, best weekend of the summer for me.
Indeed. And Diane, you managed to get down all the way from northeast of England, so that was fantastic as well. We must end today's news. Too much to put across today, but we'll try and work more in of what's happening. Obviously, UK worldwide in the up and coming UK Column news editions. But we must end for today. So I'm going to say, Ben, thank you very much for joining me. Diane, thank you for joining me. If you are a UK Column member, we will be live with Extra in a few minutes' time. Join us then. More time to discuss things, more time to have a look at that brilliant Hope Festival. But we must end there. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.